And I'm going to begin the Q&A. I am Gary Kramer. I am a film critic for Salon.com and Philadelphia News and other publications. And it is my pleasure to be here with Ofir Graizer to talk about America. This is the second feature after the CAKEMAKER, which I had seen a couple of years ago and loved, so I'm very happy to get a chance to meet and talk with him about this film. First of all, Ofir, congratulations on your film. What strikes me about your features is the sensuality of them. The use of color, the use of food in the CAKEMAKER, the use of floral and smells in this film. Can you talk about that? Because I think what's interesting is that your films have a lot of texture to them. We feel things just by the way you frame images, the way you frame characters, the way you shoot food or flowers for people, nature. There are elements in this film, water, and all these things. Can you talk about that? Because I think that's really kind of a big part of your cinema.
Yeah, sure, would love to. I mean, I think that cinema is the, like, you know, we can look at cinema as a form of telling a story or a form of entertaining also, but for me it's also a work of the senses. It's the visual of the senses. It's when we hear, we see it, and in some films you can really have almost a physical feeling. If it makes you cry or it makes you angry, this is like physical reaction. So I really have a great appreciation for the cinema, so for the use of senses, and in my film I try to reflect that, to give a chance to that. First of all, because these are the kind of movies I like.
I could see a melodrama influence in this film.
Yeah. I mean, melodrama, like in general, but also it's about that it serves a part of the story. Like specifically in America, every color is connected to a certain character or to a certain element of the story.
Right. Well, let's talk about the narrative structure of the film. I mean, you create something, you break it apart. Viewers have to feel differently about characters. Viewers have to recalibrate where they are in the story, how they feel towards the characters, what the characters are doing. I felt that true in the CAKEMAKER as well. What is the narrative structure, the logic behind your films? Because I like the way you tell these stories where I'm actively engaged in them rather than being spoon-fed an idea or a thought or a character.
I mean, like when I made, CAKEMAKER is an entirely different film, but this film, when I made it, I had like idea that I want to make an old movie. Like I'm living in the 70s and in Europe, and I'm making like this old European film. This was my approach to it. So I wanted to give time for the characters and to give time for the stories. But as I was working on the film, and we were working on it during a very crazy time, during the first lockdown of 2020, we shot the film in the first summer, so it was before we knew if there will ever be vaccination, before we knew if there will ever be cinemas ever again. Nobody was able to leave the house. We barely got all the, the bureaucratic papers that we can actually shoot the film. So during this time, while we were going through this, very emotional time, I felt like I'm writing a novel, and I'm not making a film, I'm writing a novel. And this is exactly what I wanted to do, because I wanted to to start the stories. Ellie is the hero, he's the protagonist, and then at some point, it's not about him anymore, it's about her, it's about Iris. And then at some point, it's not about Iris, it's about Yotam. Like, it's his story. Like, the last 30 minutes is his film. So, and I think the reason I wanted to do that, even though I don't like to explain my artistic bullshit, that all of this, there is a lot of guilt and a lot of shame, I think, and a lot of moral judgment also that can be put on these characters. But I don't want to put it on them. I want to tell their stories and let them have their own narrative. and through, like, once we get into everyone's perspective, I want us to see things from their eyes, and that's.
And that brings me to another point: is that in both your previous film and this feature, you have immigrant characters, and you have characters living double lives. And not just that they're hiding something, but they have two different lives. They have the life that they are publicly, and they have the life that they are personally. And we see that through the way you structure the film. We get to know Ellie, and then we see a totally different perspective when we see it from Iris's point of view. And we see Iris, and we see her character totally different when her narrative begins. And we get Tom the same. We see him in the beginning of the film, we see him at the end of the film. He's totally different. He's been reborn. Can you talk about this idea of double life?
I mean, I think it's not really double life. I mean, the way I see it, of course, everyone who can see it can have like their own interpretation. I think that in America, it's not about double life. It's about who you were supposed to be when you were a child, and who you end up to be as a grown person. That's like the gap between those two different characters. I mean, when you were a child, the way you were taught, the way you were educated, your country, your religion, your values, the home you grew up in, there was a certain feeling of what kind of grown-up person you're going to be. And then when you grow up, you end up being maybe someone totally else, but different.
And now I want to know what you were like as a child. What were you like as a child?
Me?
And what did you grow up to become?
Do you really want to know?
I think, do you want to know?
Well, as a child, I was pretty fucked up. I loved horror movies. I was a weird kid. I was pretty like, I give you one example. When I won't give you the reasons for it. You can imagine the reasons, why I was like this. But to give you one example, I think when I was 7, like 8 or 9, we had in the school this, this mission, this exercise that you get, that you had to present a hero, like a cultural hero. So some kid. Maradona, some kid, Barbie, Freddie Mercury, whatever. And my hero was Freddy Krueger. Yes, I stood in front of.
I was actually going to suggest that was your story.
Yeah, I was standing in front of the class, and I was, like a little bit. I think I was 9 years old, and I was generally excited of telling them, And his mother was locked in a maniac home, and she was, sorry to say, raped by 1,000 people, and her child came out with it. And I'm saying this, and then he started to kill children, and so they sent me to a therapist.
But all they had to do was see the movie, and they would have known that.
Yeah, but it's like, it is funny and bizarre, I am laughing about it, but I think none of those school therapists that they sent me to, none of them really understood why, as a child, I was attracted to those, darknesses, why I found, entertainment or even comfort in those, crazy, dark imaginary worlds. The reason for that I'm not gonna share, but there is there is a reason why a child is looking for, I don't know.
But I think this goes back to your film, where Eli has to leave Israel because he needs an escape from his childhood, from his father, from the masculinity that he's been presented with, to go live his own life independently. And I think that's also what makes Iris go from Ethiopia to Israel. So she has to get away with that from her family.
Yeah, Iris, she
and I think that's the double life I was talking about.
Yeah, Iris, she grew up in Israel. She didn't grow up in Ethiopia, but she was like the thing that connects her and Ellie, that they're both disconnected from their roots. And they only discover it in each other, later on, when they get to know each other, they realize how much they're both disconnected from their roots, and they both try to invent themselves and design their own fate with their own hands. And that's why chose this metaphor of the planting and the earth because, you know, it's about making your roots.
Well, and also you have strong female characters in your films, and you also deal with issues of masculinity. I mean, I felt the really palpable love between Yotam and Eli here, and it was a non-sexual love, but it was a palpable male love at the same time. Can you talk about masculinity and femininity in your films? Because I think that's really very much a part of what your cinema's about.
Sure. I mean, you know, for me, there's not much of a difference, you know. I think that, you know, for the world, for the culture we live in, even today, even in liberal and open society, there is still so much of a difference. I mean, there's still like so much more rule that has to be bent, and so many, you know, paradigms that have to be evolved. You know, we're still not a free, open world that we want to be. In fact, we're receding, like we're going backwards. I mean, you guys in the States definitely know what I mean. So, no offense, yeah. But there is a wave, you know, there is a wave now all over the world of fascism, of, you know, going back to old values, and that has a strong connection to the place of men in society and the place of women in society. And if it's about women, so obviously it's about you know, doing the role a woman has to do. If it's having a family, getting married, making children, you know, serving the man's needs, and if you're talking about the man, it's about providing and giving the financial resource, and also being devoid of the ability to feel and to love and to be emotional. And these are like the, you know, the classic roles, and I always want to make films where the characters, even maybe if they're not aware of it, you know, like I am with them, but they want to fight it, and they go against it. And I think that, you know, that Yotam and Eli, for me, their love, I mean, they have such a strong friendship. It's like companionship. It's like Sam and Frodo in Lord of the Rings. You know, it's like something you know, beyond friendship, and between friendship and love and companionship, and yeah, that's.
I have one more question. This is very loud. I have one more question before we open up to the audience. You talk about connection and being alone, and the feeling the presence of the other, even survivor's guilt in this film. I think that's a really palpable theme to do in your work, that there's someone who's not haunting you, but certainly in your mind, and that you're thinking of as these characters sort of reformulate their relationships. Can you talk about that theme in your work? Because it's this connection that these people have is unexpected and profound.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we all long for human connection. It's like the most basic, you know, thing. And this, you know, hence the title America. You know, I just got a lot of discussion about America. Like, it's about, you know, yearning for this distant land or dreamland or whatever you call it, and it's like yearning for something which is far away, or longing for it. That's like a very basic human emotion, and you know, it's universal, and it's very, very strong, and I think all three characters, they share this, you know, this strong longing to, you know, loving someone who are distant, you know, if it's physically or geographically distant, you know. Sometimes a person could be right beside you, but you cannot, you know, reach, you cannot touch because of, you know, social reasons, education, you know, people who have been taught to not feel, not love, and you know, like Eli, the house he grew up in a very violent home and abusive, and connects also to your previous question. You know, his father, he was like this man that everybody wants to be. You know, he was a war hero, and you know, a policeman, like you know, a senior policeman, and everybody was afraid of him, and like, you know.
But I like that you never see the father, but you feel his presence. I
Yeah, he's like a ghost. I mean, like when Ellie's in home, arrive in the home, we have like this little soundtrack piece, and we call it, me and the composer, Ghost, you know, because we really feel like his dad is there. So.
Does anybody have any questions from the audience? I'll take you. Yes?
So in the scene where Eli saw the boy and the father, and he saw the father giving the boy a lecture about not eating meat, and Eli went into the bathroom with where the father was. How come you didn't give us any idea what happened during that time?
The question is when Eli sees the father chastising his son for not eating, why did Ofir show what happened in the bathroom when Eli went in there to talk to him?
I feel that it's like a secret. I mean, I feel like it really is, it's like Ellie's secret or Ellie's mystery. Like, I mean, I know what happened there, and Ellie knows what happened there, and I think one can have an assumption. Did he talk to him? Did he beat him? Did he, educate him? Did he punish him? We don't know. I'm not telling them, but it's like, it's the kind of thing I felt. I mean, we had that scene, we shot it, I just didn't want to use it because I felt it's much more interesting and compelling and much more fitting Ellie's character not to know. And also, I was shooting that scene from the perspective of Iris, and Iris doesn't know, but she has an assumption. And this is actually the first scene that she really understands who Ellie is. And she gets hint before that, when she sees the home, when she reads about where he grew up, but who he is really. So, because of it's her perspective, and for her it's kind of a secret thing, kind of an enigma. And that's why I want to do it.
Thank you. My wife thought that he beat him up, and I thought that he talked to him, but I just couldn't figure it out.
It's meant to be ambiguous. There's a woman there. Yes.
I have a comment. Your use of the color was so extraordinary. How vivid they were. That's my question is, what was the location of the park that they went to, with the mountain and where the tragedy happened?
The waterfall. The waterfall is it's called the White Waterfall. And it's a stream, it's in a water stream near the Galilee Sea. The stream is named after the worst airline company, El Al. So it's called El Al stream or El Al river, and it's a beautiful place, and it was, of course, the most difficult location to shoot at because we had to walk 1 hour to get there, and it's really special. It has two waterfalls, the black waterfall and the white waterfall. It's because of the color of the rocks. And when we were looking for a place to shoot so we've seen all the waterfalls in Israel, like in the south and the north, which is like 6 or 7. And some of them was impossible to shoot because you had to get a lot of permits, and some of them were, dry. It's Israel, so there were no. It was like we saw one waterfall. It's great, but we're going to shoot in May, and we ended up shooting in August because of COVID. It's like there is no more waterfall. So, but then the last one we went to see, which we didn't want to see because it was too far, was this one. That one we went and saw it. Me and my camera guy. We just looked at it, and I called my producer and I told him, it's 1 hour walk, it's like impossible. And he asked me, Ofir, this is the right place? And I said, yeah, this is the right place. I said, okay, we're gonna do it. So we did it, and we went there twice. We shot the last scene, we shot it half a year before we shot the film. So that's why the last scene is everything is green and incredible. This was like 2 days after COVID happened. It was like walking back from shooting the last scene of the film, we got a phone call, all the borders are closed, all the flights are canceled, And then half a year later, in August, that was in February, and then in August we shot the first scene. So exactly in the same location, the same places, the same camera position. So.
Me? I agree with many people about your use of color and texture in the diversity of color. But Ellie only has blue, that monochromatic, that persistence throughout the movie. And I sort of imagined why, but I wanted to hear it from you.
The question is, why does Ellie wear blue through the whole movie?
Yeah. I mean, blue, it's a color that has a lot of meaning. And first of all, the literal meaning blue, is some kind of sadness or melancholy. But the main thing about Ellie is that water saved him. And that's why he also dedicated his life to, to teach children to be in the water. And all of his life, all of his destiny, basically, also his death is connected to water. So he kind of, like the story I'm telling to myself, that he kind of surrounded himself in blue with his clothes, with his furniture, with everything that he can, because it's almost like a post-trauma, it's in everything, it's in all the detail he needed that color, and that's just a part of who he is. So
We have time for one more question. I'll get you.
Could you talk a little bit about the rehabilitation of the character and why you need that? And someone must have known a lot about rehabilitation to make this film.
Yeah, the question is about rehabilitation and how Yotam's rehabilitation is addressed in the film.
So, I did pretty extensive research about really what happened in brain damage. I talked to doctors and I've been to rehabilitation center, and I had a number of interviews with someone who was in coma for a couple of months, like I think 4 or 5 months. Total coma, no chance of recovery, recovered fully, and became also a very sportive activist. And then last year he died in an accident, in a bike accident. It's like really a tragic story. I mean, he's a pretty famous guy. So I worked a lot on this, but my approach was to, I didn't want it to be realistic. I mean, I had the tools to make it realistic, but I wanted like in the beginning of the film, the hospital is very realistic. It's very like, this is how the hospital looks like, and all the wires and all those things, But I wanted the rehabilitation to feel like something from a different world, like something more spiritual. That's why we shot it in a monastery. We put some signs, look that. And I had like the costume and design crew, and they said, okay, do we need, all the stuff from the hospital scene? I said, no, I don't want it. I want it to be like a monastery, like a monk, and like a white room with arches and So this was the idea behind it, basically, to make it. But it was very, like the whole process of learning it and getting in touch with that. That was really hard. I also spent a lot of time in hospitals because, my family, a lot of them had health issues. They're all fine now, for now, But even while we were doing the pre-production of the film, my mother, she had cancer. So she was going through a chemo, but it was during COVID, so I could come visit her, but I had to sit, 10 feet away with a mask, so it was the whole thing about hospital. The more we got closer to the film, the more I wanted the whole sequence of Yotam's rehabilitation to be more spiritual and more emotional and less cold and clinical, less clinical, less as it really is.
One more question, sir.
So there's wonderful mysteries throughout. One of them, of course, is what happens in the bathroom. One of them is a very intimate connection that the two of them have in the water, which leads one to guess that there was a physical relationship between them. The ultimate one that, unless I missed it, was who's the father of the child. And I didn't hear that addressed, unless I missed it.
The question is, the father of the child. I repeat, is a
You missed it. It's okay, it's a long film. So.
Do you want to take one more? Okay, I'll get you. Dan.
I have a question about the scene in the
Please.
with the light bulb. Because that scene is like very subtle,
The
but
scene
it
with the
comes
light
up
bulb.
several times.
You know, that's it.
And the room in his house that has a light bulb, like a historical.
There's a scene in the house with a light bulb.
In Ellie's house. Yes, in Ellie's house, there is when he enters the room, so he looks at the room, his childhood room, and there's a light bulb, and it's like dirty, and there are big mold on the walls, and then when she's going there, she sees the room after like a year later, basically. It's all white and clean and has been cleaned and painted by Ellie or maybe by someone he hired. So that's, I mean,
It's a symbol of change and rebirth.
yeah, I guess.
But the light bulb was the same.
Yes. Same light bulb.
We have to end there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.